and welcome back to the Basement Files. Today, I'd like to take a moment to discuss one of my favorite actors, Nicolas Cage. Ahead of the premiere of his new movie, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, I thought it would be a good idea to go through some of my favorite Nick Cage movies, as I've deemed the Nicolas Cage Hall of Fame. Keep in mind, I haven't seen his entire catalog, so these 6 that I've chosen do not necessarily reflect all of his works, just the ones that I've seen. Why 6, you ask? I say why not? 6 seems like a good number. You put 3 of them together, magic. Anyway, let's get to it. Coming in at number 6 on my list is Ghost Rider, a 2007 film directed by Mark Steven Johnson, starring Nicolas Cage, Eva Mendes, Sam Elliott, and Peter Fonda. This film, Cage's foray into the comic book genre, follows stuntman Johnny Blaze as he sells his soul to Mephisto and later becomes the deadly Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider generally aims to seek out bad people and use his deadly penance stare to kill them, forcing them to see all of the bad things they've done in their life, and thus turning them into stone. Now, the plot of the movie isn't really what we're here to talk about, mostly seeing as the villains in this film were pretty forgettable considering I can't even remember their names. I know they had something to do with the elements, but that's about it. Really what we're here to talk about is Nicolas Cage as Johnny Blaze. Now, the effects were obviously from 2007, but they weren't that bad. I mean, the flaming skull, the steaming limbs, the penance stare itself really creates just a visual feast. And when you take into account that this movie is cheesy as hell, it's really not that bad. Nicolas Cage gives a classic, somewhat over-the-top performance as the main character, which couches itself well with Sam Elliott playing the former Ghost Rider. Elliott maintains more of a serious role, which balances out Nick Cage's Johnny Blaze. I love the character of Ghost Rider. I'm really happy that Nick Cage was the one that got to bring it to life for the first time, and while Marvel has tried it again in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. more recently, I wish they'd give it one more go, maybe Nicolas Cage in Multiverse of Madness. We'll have to wait a few more weeks and find out. Coming in at number 5 is Face Off, a 1997 movie directed by John Woo starring Nick Cage and John Travolta. While you watch this movie, I mean, really, what's there not to love? You have Nicolas Cage playing John Travolta and John Travolta playing Nicolas Cage. It's a dichotomy that the film creates by swapping faces of the 2 main characters. It may sound confusing, but take my word for it, it's really not. As long as you keep that simple idea in your mind that they're playing each other, it's a very linear film. Face Off is one of those movies that really showcase Nicolas Cage's love, more so adoration, for the expressionist genre of films. Take a classic expressionist movie like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, for example, where actors had to portray emotions through movements and facial expressions. Nicolas Cage really wanted to showcase that again in this movie. This movie's no exception. It proves again and again that Nicolas Cage is not just some B-list actor. He is at the top of his craft. This is made most notable in the opening scene where he's dancing through the choir singing as a priest. You can see the expressions in his face, the way he moves himself about the scene, that he's really trying to portray emotions, not through dialogue, but through other means. But on top of just the acting, the plot and narrative of this film is masterful in building suspense. You have the surgery where they actually switch faces. You have the prison scenes where John Travolta as Nick Cage is in prison because he thought he's Nick Cage, but he's actually John Travolta. You have the home invasion where Nicolas Cage as John Travolta infiltrates John Travolta's house, but nobody knows it's Nicolas Cage. It's really a wild thrill ride of suspense for the entire narrative of the movie. And this, almost more so than any other ones, really showcases Nicolas Cage's chops as an actor. Number 4 might be the dark horse of the list. It's one of the more recent ones, and fans of video games might know this one just by mention, Willys Wonderland. It's a 2021 movie directed by Kevin Lewis. It follows Nicolas Cage as a lonely grifter who says nothing throughout the entire movie, lands in a no-name town, gets his tires popped, and has to work overnight in a Chuck E. Cheese-like restaurant in order to pay off the loan to fix his car. What he does not know is that the animatronics, like at Chuck E. Cheese, will come to life at night and try to murder anyone inside the building. Now, when I said fans of video games, if you've played Five Nights at Freddy's, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Willys Wonderland is cheesy, it's stupid, it's idiotic, but it's like a sci-fi slasher. You know, crazy robots come to life and try and kill people. Somehow, when they die, they spit out blood, guts, and oil. Nicolas Cage is the one solely responsible of, 1, dispatching of the crazy robots, and 2, protecting the horde of teenagers that somehow thought it was a good idea to break into this place. If I remember correctly, only 1 or 2 of them make it out alive, but who really cares? It's a slasher with Nicolas Cage. All you want to see is Nicolas Cage bust up some demonically possessed robots. As much as I love the movie, there's a little bit of sloppy filmmaking in terms of character development, lighting, and set changes. But when it comes down to it, the movie is filled with stupidity, but it's endearing stupidity. Number 3 on this list, my personal best picture of 2021, Pig. Directed by Michael Sarnowski, starring Nicolas Cage and Alex Wolff. The film follows Nicolas Cage, who is a truffle hunter that lives in the woods with his pet pig. The pig gets abducted, and Nicolas Cage has to go on a journey to try and find his abducted pig. Hence the title of the film, Pig. This is quite possibly one of the best performances I have ever seen, not only by Nicolas Cage, but in any film, period. His role as Robin is filled with so much nuance that no matter how many times you watch the film, you'll find so many different emotions in this character, in every scene, in every interaction. Truly unbelievable by the part of Nicolas Cage. Going into this film with a couple of friends, I really thought it was going to be mostly like John Wick. You know, pig gets kidnapped, Nicolas Cage goes to break some bones. But instead of breaking bones, he breaks spirits with emotion. Through the food that his character creates, he's able to drudge up old memories from other characters, make them break down, make them see their humanity in themselves, and help Nicolas Cage gain what he wants. Which is, again, his pig. And speaking of, the two of them are so cute together. The beginning of the movie when they're just walking around the woods hunting for truffles, I could watch that for 90 minutes straight, let alone the rest of this movie. Either way, this movie is phenomenal. Number 2 on the list might be one that flies under the radar of most people. It's a 2018 film called Mandy. Directed by Panos Cosmatos, starring Nick Cage and Andrea Riseborough. I remember watching this film in my living room, sitting in my nice comfortable movie chair, and after the credits started to roll, I was so emotionally drained. I truly have not felt that in a film ever since watching that, nor have I felt it before watching that. It was genuinely a unique experience to watch that movie. The story follows Nicolas Cage and his wife Mandy living in the woods set in 1983 when a cult drives by and suddenly thinks that the leader needs to marry Mandy. So they break into the house, tie up Nicolas Cage, and eventually end up murdering Mandy due to her resistance to joining the cult. Nicolas Cage escapes from his bonds, goes through some weird drug-induced hallucination where he gets a new weapon and finds some hopped-up motorcyclists that helped in the kidnapping. And goes to town, murdering them, hunting them down, chasing them, dealing with his grief, dealing with his emotion. I mean, this film is brutally upfront and honest with emotion, grief, revenge, everything. Every single feeling that you can think that would come out of that kidnapping comes into play in this movie. I love seeing Richard Brake towards the second half, kind of to slow down the over-the-top pace, but I really don't have much more to say about this one. I watched it maybe 2-3 years ago, and I'm still at a loss for words for it. Now, before I get to number 1, I want to point out an honorable mention, National Treasure. This movie was fantastic because not only did it give you a fun look into American history, it really duped the audience into thinking that there was a national treasure besides Nicolas Cage. Now, number 1 on my list, my personal favorite Nicolas Cage movie, heading up at the top of the Nick Cage Hall of Fame, Moonstruck, 1987 film directed by Norman Jewison, starring Nick Cage, Cher, Danny Aiello, and Olympia Dukakis. I want to point out right away that if you've seen any content on this channel before, or if you know me at all, you know I hate romance movies. I hate romantic comedies. I can't sit through one without rolling my eyes every 5 minutes. Moonstruck is different. Moonstruck follows Cher as Loretta Castorini after she's proposed to by Danny Aiello's character. He goes away to Italy to visit his dying mother. Cher is now tasked with regaining contact with Nicolas Cage's character, Ronnie Camilleri, to invite him to the eventual wedding. The introduction of Nicolas Cage in this movie is masterful. When they go to the downstairs of the bakery and you see Nicolas Cage baking all that bread, you know you're in for a treat. Moving on to the monologue by Nicolas Cage, you have the "I lost my hand, I lost my bride." That whole dialogue, incredible. Again, I think this is where Nicolas Cage brings in some of his love for expressionism. Ronnie Camilleri is a very over-the-top character, backing itself with the seriousness of Cher. In this film, he's very withdrawn, yet very outspoken. It seems contradictory, but when you watch the film, you really start to realize how the two can meld into one character, and how Cage does it so perfectly along the entire runtime. This movie also gives an incredibly accurate depiction of the Italian-American household. every small little detail, from the breakfast they make in the morning, to the plastic magnets on the refrigerator that don't hold anything up, to the way that family members interact during dinner, it's spot on. All of this built with the solid foundation that Nicolas Cage and Cher lay down when they first meet each other, all the way running to the end of the movie. It's the chemistry between the lead actors that keeps the audience engaged and waiting to see what that next scene will hold every time. And with that, we've come to the end of my Nicolas Cage Hall of Fame. Will things be added to it in the future? Quite possibly. Do I think the order can change? I don't know. Maybe. We'll find out as time goes on. Be sure to catch Nicolas Cage's new movie, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, in theaters this Friday if you're watching it in any timely manner. And if you're watching it afterwards, catch it at home streaming. But really, support your local theater and go catch it. See you in the next one.